Minutes now past the hour.
I think that we all have frustration that we believe that the scope has gone well beyond what was intended to be investigations into meddling in the election. And I think that the House and the Senate have had their own investigations. The House has completed those. We're anxious for the Senate to complete his.
White House Legislative Director Mark Short sounding off on Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Let's bring in Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Karl, good to see you this morning. I would say it's safe to say there is growing frustration over the length of time this has been playing out for quite some time now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And look, if you're inside the White House and you've got a constant barrage of information about this, it distracts you from your other duties, and particularly has apparently concerned this president a lot, and he vents about it. So we should not be surprised when his people vent about it. On the other hand, the investigation is going to go as long as the investigation is going to go. And so working the refs saying you ought to wrap it up, it doesn't strike me as a particularly productive strategy. Robert Mueller is not going to wrap this thing up prematurely. He's going to wrap it up when he thinks he's ready to wrap it up. And the administration, I think, doesn't do itself much good by sounding these notes of alarm on the Sunday morning talk.
But Mark Short is saying something much more than that. He is saying that the scope of the investigation has it exceeded its original intention. Do you see that?
You know what? I don't, because we don't know. There is a scope that is contained in the original document authorizing Mueller's investigation. Mueller has gone back to the Deputy Attorney General in order to, when he has stumbled across evidence of some wrongdoing, not directly with inside the brief. For example, he found the allegation is that Paul Manafort and Rick Gates were trying to bring $30 million in profits from their consulting on behalf of pro-Putin and pro-Russian oligarchs back to the United States without paying tax on it. So he had to go back to the Deputy Attorney General and said, we have evidence of this and we need authority to pursue it. And in some instances, for example, they came across what they believed to be some wrongdoing with regard to Michael Cohen, but they didn't believe that it was appropriate or even tangentially tied to their original brief, so they gave it over to the Southern District of New York. So, look, Mueller is by the book. He is a Boy Scout. You'll notice he doesn't leak. They stay focused on the mission. At the end of the day, I think he is going to be the best evidence for Donald Trump's view that there's no evidence of collusion and conspiracy, because I think that's what his report is going to find. No evidence of collusion or conspiracy on the part of Trump. There may be some problems involving Rick Gates and Paul Manafort. For example, the Republican platform was changed from being a strong expression of support for Ukraine and Ukrainian democracy to being mute on the question, and there's some belief that those two individuals played a role in getting that done quietly. But I think the idea of collusion and conspiracy and cooperation between the Russians and the Donald Trump campaign Mueller is going to prove that is simply not the case, that none of that happened, and that is going to be the vindication the president wants.
Imagine that. If they actually let the investigation run its course, and at the conclusion of it, Mueller says absolutely no collusion. Imagine the world having to deal with that fact. Susan Collins is a Republican from Maine. The senator weighed in, and it sounds like she would urge the president to do that based on what she said here. Listen.
I believe he's staying within the parameters, and the proof of that is when he came across the allegations against Mr. He did refer them back to the Justice Department.
Even though she went on to say that she doesn't believe that Cohen is central to this investigation. So take what you will from that.
Well, yeah, I agree. And look, two things. One is presidential campaigns tend to leak. No campaign in history leaked more than the Trump campaign. If there was any kind of a conspiracy or organized effort at collusion, we'd know about it because we would have heard about it from a dozen leakers. And the second point is, I think Trey Gowdy on Fox News Sunday a couple of weeks ago made a very good point. He was talking then to John Dowd. He was addressing John Dowd, the then president's lead attorney, saying, if your client is innocent, act innocent. And I don't think it helps the president when his people go on the Sunday morning talks box and say, oh, God, you got to wrap this thing up, you know, blah, 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 because it does, I mean, show confidence. The president there's no evidence of collusion. I find it very hard to believe that after all of this time, that if there was evidence, we would have heard about it. So give the confidence that the American people like to see in their chief executive, and don't hyper.